Donald Trump has just been sentenced for his conviction in the criminal hush money case in New York, making him the first American president to be sentenced for a crime. This comes just 10 days before he takes the oath of office. Now he will return to the White House as a convicted felon. Let's get straight to our senior investigative correspondent, Aaron Katersky, outside the courthouse in Lower Manhattan. Aaron, Trump fought to the bitter end to prevent this sentencing from happening. He hoped the Supreme Court would save him, too. Clearly, that didn't happen. You were in the courtroom. How powerful were Judge Merchan's words to Trump?
He sentenced Trump to an unconditional discharge, as he promised he would. He said it was the only lawful sentence he could impose to respect both the sanctity of the jury's verdict, convicting Trump of 34 felony counts of falsifying business records.
This is not a routine court update. This is not politics as usual. This is the moment accountability stops being theoretical. A former president is no longer hiding behind delay. The justice system just put real weight on the scale. What happened today lands like a thunderclap inside American politics. A New York judge just made clear that Donald Trump's first criminal conviction is not symbolic, not academic, and not something he can outrun. The sentencing is locked in. The excuses are exhausted. And prison time is no longer a distant possibility. It is now an active consideration by the court. Breaking. Judge evidence guarantees. Trump prison time is not hyperbole anymore. It's the legal reality Trump now faces. Here's where it gets disturbing. For months, the expectation was that Trump would glide through this moment, that the system would blink, that history would repeat itself. Delay, deference, and de-escalation. A conviction on paper, followed by no real consequence in practice. That assumption is now dead. Judge Juan Merchan has ordered sentencing to proceed on January 10th. And in doing so, he stripped away the last illusion that this case would end quietly. More importantly, he made explicit that incarceration is on the table. Not probation, not a fine, not a symbolic reprimand, prison. Let me explain why this matters. Trump was convicted by a jury on 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. Not one, not a technicality. 34 deliberate acts designed to hide information from voters during a presidential election. Every count was proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Every count required intent. And every count involved a coordinated effort to deceive. That verdict has been sitting there, unresolved, while Trump tried to smother it with procedure. Appeal after appeal, motion after motion, delay after delay. He believed time itself would save him. That strategy just collapsed. The judge rejected the final attempt to turn Trump's election victory into a legal shield. The argument that sentencing would interfere with the presidency. The argument that immunity somehow stretches backward to cover private misconduct. The argument that the court should pause indefinitely because of politics. All of it was denied. The ruling was blunt. This case involves private acts. It involves pre-presidency conduct. It involves falsified records and hush money, not official duties. Immunity does not apply. Power does not apply. Delay does not apply. This is not an isolated moment. It fits a pattern that defines Trump's entire relationship with the law. He pushes. The system bends. He pushes again. The system bends further. But eventually, the structure snaps back. That is what we are watching now. A correction, a reassertion, a judge saying no more. Short sentences matter here. Facts matter here. Timing matters here. The sentencing date is 10 days before what was supposed to be Trump's inauguration. That alone sends shockwaves through Washington. A president-elect facing a state criminal sentence he cannot pardon. A defendant who must appear in person. A man who could be ordered to report to custody while still claiming executive authority. There is no historical playbook for this because no one has ever pushed the system this far. And here's the pivot point that changed everything. New evidence. Evidence the jury did not hear. Evidence reviewed by the judge in sealed proceedings. Federal investigative material that goes directly to Trump's personal involvement. Not passive, not abstract, direct. Messages, approvals, instructions, documentation showing he wasn't merely aware of the falsification scheme, He directed it. That matters enormously in sentencing. Judges differentiate between negligence and command, between ignorance and orchestration, between a corporate culture that drifts and a leader who steers it. This evidence, according to multiple reports, demonstrates Trump personally approved false entries, personally understood the purpose, and personally pushed forward despite warnings. That destroys the last argument for leniency. Controlled outrage is appropriate here. Because what we are confronting is not a paperwork crime in isolation. It was a deliberate effort to manipulate a national election by burying information from voters. The falsified records weren't an accounting error. They were camouflage. They existed to hide a hush money payoff timed precisely to influence the outcome of a presidential race. That elevates the harm. That elevates the stakes. Now add contempt. Trump repeatedly violated court orders during this case. He attacked witnesses. He targeted jurors indirectly. He lashed out at the judge's family. He ignored warnings. He paid fines and kept going. That behavior isn't background noise. It is a sentencing factor. It demonstrates defiance. It demonstrates lack of remorse. It demonstrates an ongoing belief that rules are for other people. Courts do not reward that. Let's talk about the law. In New York, falsifying business records in the first degree is a felony. Each count carries potential prison time. Judges rarely stack maximum sentences, but they do impose incarceration when aggravating factors pile up. Here, they have direct involvement, electoral interference, repeated contempt, no remorse, continued public attacks on the legitimacy of the court. That combination points in one direction. Legal analysts are converging around a likely range. Months, not decades. But months matter. A single day matters. A single night in custody matters, especially for someone who has spent his life convinced consequences are optional. This is where the authoritarian pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Trump's response to every legal boundary is escalation. When courts rule against him, he delegitimizes them. When judges enforce rules, he attacks their character. When juries convict him, he claims fraud. That is not how a democratic leader behaves. That is how a strongman reacts when institutions resist control. The sentencing decision punctures that posture. It tells every court watching that power does not suspend accountability. It tells prosecutors in other cases that delay is not destiny. It tells elected officials that the law can still function under pressure. The implications ripple outward fast. A state conviction cannot be erased by federal authority. A president cannot pardon himself from New York law. Appeals take time, and stays are not automatic. If the sentence is imposed and a stay is denied, Trump could be ordered to begin serving it immediately, before inauguration, before any oath, before any assertion of executive privilege. Imagine that reality for a moment. A convicted felon ordered to custody while claiming the presidency. Congress would be forced to act. The Constitution does not contemplate a president governing from a cell. The 25th Amendment would move from theory to emergency. Impeachment would no longer be political theater. It would be institutional triage. This is the climax because it forces choices no one wanted to make. Republican leaders who defended delay now face a binary decision: defend a sentenced criminal or defend the stability of the system. There is no middle ground left. Silence becomes complicity, delay becomes endorsement, and the public impact matters too. For years, Trump's narrative relied on abstraction, allegations, investigations, endless process. A sentence collapses that fog. It translates misconduct into consequence. It transforms rhetoric into reality. Voters understand prison. They understand sentencing. They understand when a judge says enough. This moment also reshapes every other case. Federal prosecutors, state prosecutors, civil plaintiffs. They all see the same signal. Courts are willing to move. Judges are willing to enforce. The myth of invincibility is broken. Trump's reaction has been predictable: attacks, denial, claims of persecution, vows to fight forever. But courts do not sentence vibes. They sentence evidence, and the evidence just crossed a threshold. This is not revenge. This is not politics. This is accountability delayed, but not denied. A jury did its job. A judge is doing his. And the system, strained but standing, is reminding the country that no office converts private crime into immunity. History will mark this moment, not because of who Trump is, but because of what the institutions chose to do. They chose law over fear. They chose process over pressure. They chose consequence over convenience. Stay informed. Stay sharp. For real. Unfiltered updates like this, make sure you like, subscribe, and stay connected.